So now we come to stanza number 68, ninth chapter, the chapter on wisdom of Bodhicharyavatara. So now this is another way of presenting the self or the Atma from a different philosophical point of view. This is basically said to be the philosophy of Vaisasika, one very ancient Indian philosophy. Something destitute of mind we hold is not a self. So according to this philosophy, they said that that self, that Atma, is not just consciousness. It's not consciousness. It's non-consciousness. Because if it is consciousness, then it is too limited. That is unlimited. It's very vast. So therefore, it's not consciousness. It's more than consciousness. It's it's something there, something material, something existing, something, but it is not consciousness. So this this is the Vaisasika says the Atma is like space. It spreads everywhere. It consists of everything. It's everywhere, or it extends to everything, and it is permanent. It's in its nature, and it's not consciousness. Because if it is consciousness, then it cannot be, it cannot cover everything. It cannot be extended to everything, and it cannot be permanent. The consciousness is impermanent, so therefore has to be, because it changes and things like that, so it is permanent. But it is something pembo, something material, something there, something existing. Then you said that then how come, that the experience of self, it can experience, the pleasure and pain and all kind of things, neutrality, because it can be connected with the consciousness. And then the consciousness, then you can actually get attached to it. So this is, the way we are experiencing, but it's not. If they say like that, then that which is not unconscious, something that is unconscious, is also cannot be, from Buddhist point of view, the self, because there is no consciousness, there is no mind, and if it is not mind, if it is not consciousness, then it should be like the pot there, and the pot doesn't feel, the pot doesn't know, the pot doesn't have any consciousness. So therefore, that self can be just like the pot, and then there would not be any sense of me and my happiness and unhappiness and things like that. So there is, that wouldn't work. But if they say that, its nature is not mind, but it is something that connects with it. It is it can come together. It can connect with mind, and it's kind of it connects, and it's kind of blessed, influenced by consciousness or with consciousness, and so therefore it can actually experience all these experiences that we have. If we say that, so if in that case you say that that self would not know anything, would not have consciousness, so therefore it wouldn't know anything. And so if that is the case, then your presentation that the Atma or the self has no consciousness or does not have a consciousness wouldn't stand, because you say it can have consciousness and it can be connected with consciousness. So that assertion that it is not a consciousness would not stand, because if it can have a consciousness, then it has consciousness. Whether it is due to some connection or due to whatever reason, it has consciousness. Because it becomes a consciousness. It would have consciousness, and all the feeling of suffering and pain and happiness and all these kind of things has to be there when there is consciousness, and so you can't say it has no consciousness. And therefore, if you say that Atma or that self, which is not a consciousness, then later can be kind of connected, or can have some due to some influence, can get consciousness or have become conscious, then that means it changes. So therefore, your assertion that it's permanent also doesn't stand. And so therefore it becomes also impermanent. Because if that is, that doesn't change at all, and it is impermanent. If it is permanent, then it should not change. Then it has to be, permanent. Then if that is the permanent, then it can't be conscious, because something that is not conscious become conscious is a change, and that means it is not permanent. For instance, space or sky, we can say it's permanent, or we can say it is there, because it's not there. So therefore, you cannot put color and make changes there. Therefore, something that is existing and has a kind of material existence, but it has no consciousness, and it doesn't do any activities like space, and that is the self, the Atma. That presentation, that way of thinking becomes very strange. It doesn't stand any known kind of logic or understanding. So therefore, something distinct from mind we hold is not a self, for mindlessness means matter, like a vase. But you say the self as consciousness when joined to mind, then this refutes its nature of unconsciousness. Then unconsciousness doesn't happen, it must become conscious. And if that becomes conscious, then something before it was unconscious, now it becomes conscious, so it changes, so it's not permanent. So 69, if the self, moreover, is immutable, what change in it could mingling with the mind produce? If it is totally permanent and if it's totally changeless, then it cannot be affected by something. It cannot affect anything because it cannot make any changes. It has to be totally permanent and unchanging, and not making any kind of actions or reactions. So even if it mingles with the consciousness or mind or whatever, it cannot have something different like consciousness. And selfhood we might equally affirm of empty space, inert and destitute of mind. So if that is like that, it is totally, permanent, without any consciousness, without any change, but something existing on its own, materially, bamboo, then it's very difficult to present that, to assert that. Either it changes, or it never have any consciousness, or if it is something existing, then it must be something like a vase, so it can and if it is permanent, then it has to be without consciousness, and then it cannot have consciousness because then it changes. So it becomes something very very unacceptable assertion. So this is kind of a very short way kind of refuting the Vaisheshika. Of course, Vaisheshika is very logical. Actually, is lots of logic there, and it's not easy to just reject them like that. It is they have been debating for centuries after centuries of centuries. It's a very refined philosophy, both Samkhya and Vaisheshika. So it cannot be totally in this short way. But anyway, the understanding, the gist of it is that whether we say the consciousness, whether we say the self, if we say the self is permanent, self exists on its own, and self is, consciousness or unconscious, whatever you say, it wouldn't, what we can say, it wouldn't stand the logic. Either it has to be conscious and also, changing and impermanent, or even if it is not conscious, still, it has to have some consciousness at some time. Otherwise, then it is not self. So when that consciousness comes, then it becomes changing. So therefore, you can't say. So therefore, these kind of ways of looking at the self is permanent. Self exists on its own. Self is, kind of truly there and permanent and unchanging. Would not be there, would not be easy to establish. From Buddhist point of view, yes, self is there relatively. It's relatively there, it's dependently there, it's experienced, it continues also, But when you look deeply, it's like everything in the world, it's an interdependent thing, it's a dependent thing, it's a relative thing. If you look deeply, that it doesn't have any true existence. It's like, if you have to give example, you can give the example of, you can give any example. You can give the example of rainbow, you can give the example of even the sky, but not sky as something solidly there. You can give the example of river, you can give the example of, anything, but, it's like that. It's not that it is not there, it is relatively, it's very much there, but, it's not the way as we think it is. So therefore, it is, it's impermanent, it's interdependent, things like that. So I think we stop here, and before that, I think I haven't read the Tibetan section of Seme payo damante seme nichur pasu wente sendo dembisi hina mishinji pata jete dolan jermena sembitela jishi is. I think that's the one. Tetra himi shatalwa nonga datishi panjashus. So these last two, Tetrahime Chatawa Nakadatashi Panjir, which is in English is and self would be might equally a form of empty space, inert and destitute of mind. I don't know if we can understand too much from the translation, but if what you say, the nature of the Atma is, then it is like saying that this space is me. That it becomes like that. It doesn't. So that's 69. I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much.